Game 1 of the NBA Finals is a shocker. The Indiana Pacers come from behind a 15-point fourth-quarter comeback to stun the Paycom Center. 111-110 is the final. Indiana takes a 1-0 lead. Game 2 on Sunday. We've got a lot of thoughts to go over, but right now let's hear from Thunder head coach Mark Daigneault, who is at the press conference podium.
Conversion and some of the stuff you had around the rim that just didn't go down. What did you notice in real time about maybe the angles you all were getting on drives or some things there that you all can clean up in Game 2?
Yeah, it was a little bit of everything. I thought we were a little sloppy on some gathers. They got a piece of the ball on some of the plays. I thought there were some that we probably jammed up there, and we could have gotten to 2 feet or sprayed the ball back out. And some of them we just didn't finish, which is part of the game. I mean, we don't have to be perfect, but we do have to learn from it. You know, it's a team we haven't played a ton this season, so tonight gave us a feel for them. And we've got to take that feel, figure out where we can improve, and just improve as the series goes on. That's always our mantra through these series is we just have to grow with the series. That's going to be our challenge in this one. But we got to get to work on that, obviously.
Myron, up front.
Yeah, a couple of things. One, you got the turnovers tonight, 25, but they didn't produce a lot of points, and you led the playoffs in points off turnovers. And also, Obi Toppin, it's like every time he came with a big three-pointer, was he doing something to get open, or was they running some stuff for him? But he seemed like he really hurt you tonight.
Yeah, I mean, the turnovers, that I thought was a big part of it. Our conversion, we want to be fast up the floor. I didn't think we converted a lot of advantageous situations tonight, so we can learn from that. Like I said, we want to be in the paint against this team. Thought we got there a lot and just didn't convert those. So offensively, there's things we can look at. And then defensively, they made some plays. They made some shots. I mean, Neesmith made some big shots, and Toppin, shot the heck out of the ball. I don't know what they shot as a team from 3. I think it's like 45 or 46. But they shot the hell out of the ball. They have all playoffs. We got to look at the ones that, if they're contested and they just make a shot, you tip your hat. But there was a lot of them that were on our breakdowns. We got to learn from those and credit them. They made us pay when we made mistakes tonight.
Dan in the center.
Fine, Yahoo Sports. Seemed like with some of the switching that you guys were getting into, they were able to get a little bit more of their, Siakam or Turner on some of your smalls. Is that, I mean, obviously that's part of game plan, but is that something that you're concerned about with the height advantage they're able to get to down low?
Only if they take advantage of it. Some of it's the cost of doing business, to be able to get perimeter speed on the court, get more switching in the game. I mean, it's obviously something that is a trade-off, but we can look at it. I thought the small lineup at the end of the first half looked pretty good. Offensively, we didn't move the scoreboard, but I thought we were getting some good stuff there. That's why I went back to it down the stretch. But, when we're small, we have to be pressure-oriented and contain the ball. And I thought they got some cracks against us that hurt us a little bit more than the post-ups did. But we'll look at everything. We obviously have to be better if we want to win Game 2.
Next row back.
Yeah, you had a starting lineup.
That is Mark Daigneault from the press conference podium, as it's still kind of a surreal feeling inside the Paycom Center for the Thunder to have a 15-point lead with 9 minutes and 42 seconds to go, and it ultimately results in an Indiana win. I think I speak for everybody. Just a kind of a state of shock, Josh, inside the Paycom Center. Like, did that actually happen?
Yeah. Weird game because it felt like the Thunder were in control of it the whole way, essentially, but at the same time, never could deliver that knockout blow. We were talking about that throughout the game. It was about a 10, 11, 12-point lead. It felt like quite literally like wire to wire until the very end. But every time it looked like Oklahoma City was going to maybe go for the big punch and go up 20-plus. Indiana would get a big bucket. OKC couldn't hit a big bucket. And we kind of felt like that might cost them, and it did at the end. And eerily similar to Game 1 against Denver, just like you said, a shocked feeling in here, as I think everyone thought Oklahoma City was going to get this thing done, and then all of a sudden, boom, they didn't.
It very much looked like both teams had a long layoff right in the first half. Both teams, I thought, played pretty sloppy offensively. The shot making was not at a premium in the first half, but the Thunder were able to generate turnovers. Unfortunately, they weren't able to turn a lot of those turnovers into points. At the end of the day, it's wild to me, and we heard Mark Daigneault address it, 25 turnovers for the Indiana Pacers to only 7 for the OKC Thunder, but the Thunder only turned those 25 turnovers into 11 points. That was a major factor. They had so many opportunities, it felt like, to really put some separation between themselves and the Indiana Pacers. They were never able to capitalize, and credit Indiana for doing just enough to stay within arm's reach, and then in the fourth quarter, they got hot from the outside and really made OKC pay.
Yeah, this Indiana team has developed a habit of, if they're just within 10, 15, they've done it all playoffs. They can close that gap, and they feel like they're still in the game, and that's what they managed to do throughout. You mentioned it. we talked about it in pregame that if Indiana wants to play that pace that they like to play, if they turn it over a lot, that's where Oklahoma City normally can really ramp up a big lead. They just simply did not do that today, did not take advantage of the points off turnovers like they typically do, and it caught up to them as they never could land that knockout blow, and then Indiana was able to close that gap late, and Tyrese Halliburton did it again at the end.
Lou Dort was phenomenal tonight. Not only a bunch of timely threes, but I thought, hitting the glass, just hustle plays, the amount of steals, and just overall loose balls that he went after. He was a game changer without a doubt. I specifically remember him last week talking about Indiana, how dangerous they are in transition, and he was asked, what about their transition game, generates all of their success? And he mentioned rebounding. A lot of their success comes from rebounding. Indiana had 17 more rebounds than the Thunder tonight.
Yeah, that's a staggering number, obviously. Yeah, Lou was phenomenal in this game, was a big part of why Oklahoma City had the lead throughout. Him and SGA were really the only guys who had it going, really throughout the night. Got to the line a little bit, did Shea like he typically does, but Jalen Williams had a hard time. Chet Holmgren was really a non-factor in this game for the most part, and they're going to have to find a way to get those other guys going, but it kind of, anytime Lou hits, how many threes do you end up with? Do you have
Five.
Five. Lou hits 5 threes for you,
yeah,
and you don't win, that hurts a little bit.
And you get 38 from the MVP,
right,
and it's in a loss. So speaking of the MVP, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander is now at the press conference podium. Let's listen in.
Good look, felt good, didn't go in. And then they got a look, and it went in. I don't know. Basketball, ups and downs. It is what it is. You can't do anything about it now. Just got to be better for next game.
Joe?
Aside of the Oklahoman, Shea, was this reminiscent of Game 1 Denver at all for you? You guys control most of the game. They come back late. And if so, can you sort of draw back on that experience?
Yeah, we just got to focus on being better. The series isn't 1-1, it's 1-4. So we have 4 more games to get. They have 3, and that's just where we are. We got to understand that, and we got to get to 4 before they get to 3 if we want to win the NBA championship, and it's that simple. It's not rocket science. We lost Game 1. We have to be better.
Nick on the right.
Shea, in being better, what do you feel are some controllables, particularly on the offensive end of the floor, just given the number of looks you guys got in the paint, downhill? It seemed like you guys were getting downhill a lot, but those shots weren't going down.
Yeah, honestly, I'm not too sure. It's hard to, have that answer 20 minutes after the game. But, yeah, for sure, we definitely areas to get better on both ends of the floor, and it's what the next 2 days are for, try to get better and then come out here and be a better team for Game 2.
Jenny, here on the left.
Shea, Jenny Carlson with the Oklahoman. You guys have, when you've had games that have slipped through your fingers in these playoffs, you've found a way to come back and make good on that. But in the finals, with the pressure being what it is, how can you guys make sure that you do that again? Or is this kind of an unknown because you guys as a group haven't been to this point yet?
Yeah, I think as much as we can, we just got to treat it like every other game, every other situation we've been in. Yes, we haven't been in this situation, but it doesn't mean our character has to change or what we did last time. It's still basketball, it's still a game of basketball that we grew up playing. The rules don't change just because we're in the finals. So it's like we've been in this situation before. In the other situation, we handled it well. We were better for Game 2, and that's the goal.
Tim on your right, third row.
Tim McMahon, ESPN. Shea, I'm sure you are aware of just the crazy clutch run that Halliburton's on.
That was Shea Gilgeous-Alexander from the podium following a 111-110 shocker in favor of the Indiana Pacers. We'll take a quick timeout. We have more post-game thoughts next on The End Zone.
You're watching The End Zone, sponsored by Lucky Star Casino.
A shocker at the Paycom Center in Game 1 of the NBA Finals. The Pacers pull off an upset over the heavily favored Oklahoma City Thunder. The Thunder were heavy favorites in the series and obviously nearly double-digit favorites tonight for Game 1. If I had told you going into tonight that Tyrese Halliburton was going to be held to 14 points and Pascal Siakam is going to be held to 19 points. There's no way you were thinking that Game 1 ends in a Pacers win, right?
Plus Shea gets 38.
Plus Shea gets
Plus
38.
Dort hits 5 threes. Yeah, it was kind of the other guys for the Pacers. It was Obi Toppin. It was Miles Turner. Those two guys in particular, it felt like hit roughly a billion big shots down the stretch of this game. So like every time the Pacers need a big bucket, those guys stepped up, which is frightening, especially on the road. You know, that's something we haven't seen against Denver and against Minnesota. It seemed like the other guys couldn't really do it here. First game of the NBA Finals, and the Pacers got that kind of night from their other guys. That's a little worrisome, I think, moving forward.
I still think it's a good recipe, right? Make those guys show that they can beat you consistently as opposed to letting Halliburton and Pascal Siakam, who have shown consistency. In the Minnesota series, we saw a couple games where Anthony Edwards and Randall didn't have it going. The supporting cast had a couple games where they played well, but over the course of the series, they weren't able to get it done. I think it is a winning recipe in the long term, but that doesn't do anything for the Thunder tonight. Again, I know we mentioned it in the last segment, but Lou Dort was phenomenal. I thought Alex Caruso was phenomenal. The Thunder seemed to lack a little bit of juice early in this game. I thought both teams lacked juice early in this game, to be honest, and I think that's because of the long layover following both of their conference wins. But I thought Caruso really gave this team and this building juice early. He played great. I thought steals, just finding ways to get buckets, showed a lot of toughness. Again, you have these performances from your bench, from guys like Lou Dort from the outside, big-time performance from SGA. It's kind of crazy. I don't think J-Dub necessarily played a bad game, but he wasn't in your face. And Chet, we haven't even mentioned Chet Holmgren's name yet.
They didn't go either of the bigs at the end of this game. That's very interesting moving forward. They went small by the end of the game. Is that something that they'll stick with? That's a huge adjustment and kind of question mark, really.
I didn't think we would see any adjustments to start Game 1 of this series. Mark Daigneault made a giant adjustment to start Game 1, and that was taking Isaiah Hartenstein out of the starting lineup, enter Cason Wallace, and the Thunder were out-rebounded by 17. All right, we've got more post-game coverage coming up next. Again, it's a shocker here at the Paycom Center. Along with Josh Calloway, I'm Colby Daniels.
You're watching The End Zone, sponsored by Lucky Star Casino.
Following a 111-110 shocking comeback for the Indiana Pacers, let's send it to Lou Dort in the press conference room and hear his thoughts.
Pressure. What happened? What changed in the second half for you guys defensively?
I guess they did a better job taking care of the ball. Our intensity's been the same. They hit a lot of tough shots. But that's just how we play. We play really hard, and we trying to turn them over. And then, I feel like they just took care of the ball.
Over here on the fourth row on the left.
Jerry Ramsey from the franchise. Lou, despite the loss, you shot the ball pretty well and sort of kind of kept the Thunder in offensively for a little bit there. Just talk about, getting into finals Game 1 and just kind of putting that on your shoulders. Defensive specialist, sure, but knocking down these shots to keep them in the game.
Yeah, just got to shoot the right shots, honestly. Be in the right spots. We got a lot of guys that attract a lot of defenders. So, whenever I can get open, I'll try my best to do it and to shoot with confidence.
Go ahead, Dan, in the middle.
Dan Devine, Yahoo Sports. Two have forced them into I think it was 19 turnovers in the first half, but only be up 12 at halftime. What was the process like offensively for you guys in the first half?
All right, Josh, Game 1 goes to the Indiana Pacers. Game 2 still here at the Paycom Center on Sunday. What's the panic meter looking like?
I don't think you're smashing it, but, Game 2 is kind of a must-have, right? And when their backs were against the wall in this same exact spot against Denver, they beat the Nuggets by 50, right? So I'm not saying they're going to do that in Game 2, but that's how they responded last time. We'll see what they do this time. You got to find a way to at least take it even. Because that's the key. They lost the home game, right? That was a big thing going in. That they will, felt borderline unbeatable in this place. You just drop one here. Now you have to win one in Indy. So Game 2 is kind of everything.
Very similar situation to that Game 1 against Denver where you have the big lead.
Yeah.
It falls apart late and everybody's stunned at the end of the day. I will say the Thunder have absolutely responded in a big way to adversity throughout this postseason run, and they've won every game following a loss. And as you said, you can't lose 2 at home. We'll see on Sunday, but I think they're going to show up in a big way. All right, back to you, Brenna, in the studio.
Colby and Josh, thank you so much. And thank you for joining us. We'll have another edition of The End Zone.